Metal could never have predicted this, not if he had spent 1,000,000 years calculating it, and it haunted him. For the second time, he had helped Sonic. But it was worse than that. For this time, he had helped deliberately. He had to follow the optimal escape path, even if he didn't like it, because helping Sonic was optimal. He had to save himself. It was one of his core directives, and to that end, he had to escape. He couldn't escape without Sonic's help, nor could he kill Sonic. He had to help him, and he had to kill him. It defied all heuristics, but the numbers didn't lie. "Metal, stop daydreaming and get over here!" Sonic shouted over the roar of water. He clamped one hand over the door handle and waved the other at Metal. "Did you try the deadbolt?" Metal said as he splashed through the water on his way to the door. His dilemma was terrible, but he needed to focus on his escape. He would never solve the paradox if he stayed here. "There is no deadbolt!" The water dragged against Metal's waist as he reached the door, the level rising with every passing second. The utility door had been installed near the top of the room, and it rose above him. As he reached up, his fingers only brushed the bottom of the threshold. "Just get up here!" Sonic grabbed his hand and pulled him to the doorframe. Metal squeezed himself into the tiny space, and his chassis pressed against both Sonic and the door. "Why won't it open? Come on!" Sonic looked down at the water lapping at his feet, then back to Metal. I can't swim!" Metal grabbed his copy's hand. Sonic was panicking, and this could only lead to suboptimality in the lesser Hedgehog's behavior. "We need to apply pressure simultaneously," Metal said as he jerked Sonic's hand back to the mechanism. Sonic appeared dazed, so Metal shook his hand, and Sonic snapped up. "Push now!" Metal's voice faded against the roaring water, and he struggled against the door with every newton of force he could generate. Sonic hesitated. He shook his head, then slammed into the door himself. The door flung open and slammed into the hall. Metal processed the change in resistance immediately, and he halted the force exerted from his systems. Sonic, being true to the slower clone he was, slipped and fell forward. Metal reached for his arm, but Sonic only twisted as he fell into Metal's side. Sonic bolted up, then shook his head as he crawled into the hallway without looking back. "Is this how you brought us here? It's tiny!" Sonic pushed against the wall with his hands, as if to emphasize his point. "Where does it lead?" "Back to the magnet room, I think. I'm not sure if it goes elsewhere. My systems were greatly impaired at the time." Sonic looked down at the water as it lapped against his legs. "I'll go on ahead. I can spin dash and you can't drown. You can catch up." "Sonic, no! We can't get separated. That would lower the probability of my escape by at least a factor of 10. "Your escape? I will drown by the time you manage to crawl 3 feet!" Sonic glared at him, and Metal felt the water leaking into his chest panel. "Don't be dense. Obviously, I can't let you drown. It has to be me, and only me, that ends you." "Oh, great! What a relief!" Sonic groaned, casting a side glare at Metal. Fine. Just follow my lead, and I don't want to hear any complaining." Sonic lunged forward. He splashed into the water, then grabbed Metal's ankles and spun his feet into Metal's face. "Grab my legs." "I failed to see..." Metal caught himself. No complaining. He grabbed Sonic's legs, feeling his copy's warm fur in one hand. He reached for Sonic's other leg, but sensed a brief electromagnetic repulsion, as if he was forcing 2 similar magnetic poles together. Still, the force was minor, so he forced his arm forward and grabbed Sonic's mechanical leg. "We'll spin out of here together, like how me and Tails do all the time." Sonic kicked forward, and while he flung upward, Metal splashed under him. Metal froze as his processors consumed a full clock cycle in confusion. As the information propagated through his motherboard, he rose over Sonic, while his copy rolled under the water. Sonic then spun upward again, and at last Metal understood the pattern. They were to spin together, and Sonic's momentum would carry them both down the hallway. Metal heard Sonic gasp for air when he rose up, then held his breath as he splashed under the water. How Sonic managed to coordinate his breathing, Metal wasn't sure. He merely took solace in his superiority. After all, he wasn't the one who needed to breathe. Metal monitored the water level, and it was rising rapidly. As the water submerged the ceiling lights, the last traces of air disappeared. The dim bulbs glowed underwater, mercifully waterproof, and the eerie light danced against the current. Sonic stopped breathing. He coughed, then coughed again. He inhaled more water and began to choke. His grip failed, and while he drifted forward, Metal sank to the floor. While he couldn't kill Sonic, Sonic could certainly still die. This was a problem because it had to be him that ended Sonic, and while that was still technically an impossible task, no, he didn't have time to process that right now. He needed to act. Sonic only had 56.3 seconds before oxygen deprivation killed him. They were too far down the hallway to turn around. The decision tree had only one branch. He grabbed Sonic's wrist and ran. His objective was to neutralize Sonic the Hedgehog. It had to be him that neutralized Sonic. He had to prove he was better through his own actions, either beating or outsmarting Sonic, not watching as he drowned in another's trap. If Nega drowned Sonic now, then Metal would fail his primary objective. He also needed to escape. If Nega killed Sonic, he would not escape. He would save Sonic so he could kill Sonic later. Somehow. The water sloshed against Metal, slowing him down as he dragged Sonic's lifeless body behind him. The eerie spectrum of light cast by the submerged bulbs was too dim, and the murkiness of the water limited his optical sensors. He amplified his optics, and a red light extended forward. 31.32 seconds were left. Metal was all but powerless. He knew not how far they had come, nor how far he had to go. He could only measure Sonic's vital signs and run. 15.28 seconds. Metal contemplated activating his sensors, but would it make a difference? The door was either there, or it wasn't. 7.12 seconds. He activated all of his sensors. It was better than nothing, even though he didn't have time to propagate the data through his models. 3.95 seconds. The sound of rushing water cracked into his audio sensors. He had to be close. There must be an open area ahead. He pushed forward as fast as his pistons would allow. 2.29 seconds. Metal saw it. A closed door with air bubbles leaking from the hinges. 0.97 seconds. Metal leaped forward, hurtling towards the door with as much velocity as he could muster. 0.13 seconds. Metal's foot struck the door. It buckled under his weight. Though it didn't fold, he kicked it again. 0.01 seconds. The door flew open and the water rushed in, pushing them along with it. Metal sank to the floor, and his grip slipped from Sonic's arm, who then floated to the center of the room. Metal jumped to his feet and ran toward him. He skidded to a stop, splashing water over Sonic's lifeless body as he slowed. He fell beside Sonic and pressed his fingers against Sonic's neck, feeling for a pulse. Sonic would be fine. He had to be fine because the math said he would be fine. Metal's models couldn't fail him again. As he moved his hand towards Sonic's chest, a wet, white glove shot up from the floor and swatted his hand away. I'm fine, Sonic said, weakly half opening his eyes. He wasn't dead. Of course he wasn't dead. Metal predicted he wouldn't be dead, and here he was, not dead. The universe was restored to order. Sonic launched into a fit of coughing, and Metal knew he could do nothing more. Sonic's lungs were operating in accordance with their standard protocol. Standing back up, he processed as much about their new location as his motherboard could handle. Much to his relief, they were not in the magnet room, but instead sat in a massive, concrete cylinder stretching nearly 100 meters upwards. Despite the great height, the ceiling was much closer to them, for the room was filled with glass floors stacked upward. Inside each floor, the same Nega egg pond from the prison cell clumsily patrolled. The roar of water overwhelmed his audio sensors, and Metal realized they were in the middle of the cylinder, not the bottom. A bridge spanned across the center, with guardrails running the perimeter, and water poured down the sides. Metal scooted to the side and peered over the edge. Below, an endless pond of greenish fluid filled the bottom. As the waterfall crashed into it, a green mist rose from its surface. Sonic ceased coughing and looked up at Metal. We're not... He paused, appearing dazed, then continued. Out of the water yet. Metal wanted to groan, but an all too familiar and unwelcoming crack cut him off.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second part of our show. I'm certain the anticipation of this game is simply eating away at you.
I'm getting really sick of you, Egg Breath. Why don't you just come fight me yourself? Sonic shouted back at the ceiling.
Fight you? How barbaric! I merely mean to entertain you. And look at you. You've still smashed through my hospitality. Tisk tisk, Sonic. You and that paperweight need to learn some manners.
Metal paused. Did Nega just call him a paperweight? Now that he thought about it, Nega always exclusively addressed Sonic and never him. It was like he didn't even consider Metal worthy of attention. Not that it surprised him. No one ever considered him worthy of attention.
But that's why we have the second part of our show. Allow me to explain the rules.
A spotlight flashed above them, illuminating an egg pond that stood in front of a simple steel podium with 2 buttons.
The game is simple. Select the right button and teleport up.
A drum roll played over the speakers, and as the egg pond hit the button, a flash of light engulfed it. A triumphant tune played as the lights dimmed, and the egg pond had reappeared in the room above.
But pushed the wrong button?
The drum roll started again, and the second egg pond hit the podium. This time, the glass collapsed beneath its feet. A low, sad tone played as it fell and splashed into the green lake below. Metal rushed to the side and watched as the egg pond sank to the bottom. Bubbles rose from its armor, popping into steam at the top of the lake. The egg pond smeared into a blur. As the nucleation of bubbles slowly cleared, only a swatch of colors remained, and they slowly drifted apart in the fluid.
So, any questions?
Sonic looked below blankly. Did that egg pond just dissolve?
Oh yes, didn't I mention that before? The bottom of this chamber is filled with a super concentrated hychloric acid, the kind that's strong enough to dissolve even iron.
Sonic looked horrified. But what about the animal that was powering the robot? Did it just dissolve too? There it was again. Sonic talked to Nega, and Nega talked to Sonic. They treated Metal as if he wasn't even there, and Metal was sick of it. He elbowed Sonic. Oh, so you're just so concerned about the animal, but what about the egg pond? Sonic cocked his head. What about it? It wasn't like it was alive. Metal threw his hands in the air. He didn't care about the egg pond either, but he had a point to make. Oh, and I suppose that means it was worthless? He pointed at Sonic's mechanical leg. And I suppose you'd be fine if your leg just melted them, because hey, it's not like it's alive, Metal said in his best interpretation of Sonic's voice, though his speech hardly changed. Sonic opened his mouth right as Nega cracked over the speaker.
Oh, no worries, Sonic. Animals are a renewable resource, and unlike my bumbling counterpart, I use only the finest, most pollutant substances in my Badnik army. Every one of my egg ponds is powered only by the most unsustainable of chaos drives.
Metal looked below the bridge. Water still poured below, and it was driving the acid level closer. Ahead, near the end of the room, Metal saw a similar podium with 2 buttons. Sonic merely looked blankly at the loudspeaker, so Metal grabbed his hand and dragged him towards the podium. Sonic, snap out of it! We need to get out of here, Metal said as he shook Sonic by the shoulders. Sonic slapped his forehead, then looked at Metal. You're right. Let's do this. The podium before them held 2 buttons, one red and one blue. Supposedly, he was supposed to push one of the buttons. But which? Nega, elaborate on the constraints of your game, Metal said towards the loudspeaker. No response. Well, let's just pick one. Sonic leaped from behind Metal and smashed the red button. Sonic, no! Metal's optics went offline for a brief moment as a flash engulfed Sonic. When it cleared, Sonic stood on the floor above him. Woohoo! That was easy! Sonic cheered as he jumped in the air. Come on, Metalhead, you gotta keep up! As Sonic walked towards the podium in his room, Metal called out, Sonic, wait, don't push any more buttons! We don't know how this works! Metal touched the surface of the podium with his hand. He had to consider all the data in his next action. Nega spoke only to Sonic, and only the first egg pond had teleported up, while the second had fallen into the acid. Nega could be planning to move Sonic up and dump Metal in the acid, regardless of what button he chose. Both buttons had initially glowed, but now the red one was dim. Sonic had pushed the red button and moved up, so if Metal pushed the blue, the evidence indicated he would fall into the acid. He looked below. The water was still pouring in, and the acid was nearly to the level of the bridge. Sonic, do you have 2 buttons? Are they both lit? Yep, they sure are, and I'm gonna press one. You will not, Sonic, wait! Metal considered. If Sonic pressed the blue one, he would drop down, and if they were together, maybe they could both teleport. You're too slow, Metal, come on, let's go! Sonic smashed the blue button. The light flashed, and he appeared directly in front of Metal on the bridge. No. I was supposed to go up, Metal. Why didn't I go up? Good question, Sonic. Maybe if you weren't scampering around like an idiot and actually listened to me, I'd have this figured out by now. Sonic went to protest, but Metal cut him off as he grabbed Sonic's hand. Perhaps if they were touching, they would both teleport. He hit the red button. The light flashed, and as it cleared, Metal stood, alone, in the room above Sonic. Sonic ran to the edge of the bridge. Come on, Metal! This isn't funny! The acid is almost up here! Then he froze as horror crept over his face. You aren't going to abandon me again, are you? So help me, Metal. If you let me dissolve in acid, I will do something, and you'll regret it! Time was precious, and Metal didn't have enough of it to explain his plan to Sonic. After processing the data, he now understood how the game worked, and he had to get them both to safety, because if reality was a probability, then he could stack the deck. The egg pawn from earlier clanged idly around the room, and Metal ran over to it. Just as he had done in the prison, he ripped the power cable from its back. The egg pawn slumped over, and Metal tore its maintenance panel open. He had the schematics of every badnik in his database, and Nega didn't appear to deviate from Eggman's plans at all. This was fortunate, because Metal saw what he needed right where he expected it. A yellow chaos drive glowed from inside. Sonic smashed the red button on and off. It's not working! Why isn't it working? With the chaos drive in hand, Metal ran back to the podium, hit the blue button, and appeared next to Sonic, just in time to swat his copy's hand away from the blue button. Stop pressing the button! Metal hissed. He looked over the edge. The steam from the acid was dangerously close. Sonic threw his hands in the air. Oh well, what would you have me do? Just sit here and die while you run off? He didn't have time for this. He handed the chaos drive to Sonic, then rummaged through the crate until he found the quantum wave function collapse inducer. Sonic stared at the drive in his hands. You better hurry, Metal, because the acid is almost here, and I can get us out of here with just a push of a button! Sonic, no! Just trust me! His plan would work. Chaos drives, like the Chaos Emeralds, were quantum objects. They exhibited all the strange behaviors of quantum mechanics. Further, if the podium teleportation was chaos control, and Metal suspected it was, then it was a form of quantum teleportation. Metal could exploit quantum entanglement to save them both. Entanglement was a special type of system-level correlation. A change in one wave function would change the rest in the system. However, there was a catch. It wasn't easy to entangle a quantum system. He needed two particles created from the same source. Fortunately, he already had the chaos drive, so it was a simple matter to upload the factors of its wave function into his emerald detector. With the detector in one hand, he grabbed one end of the chaos drive in his other. Sonic, we need to break this in half, and whatever you do, don't let go of your half. Snap it now! Sonic nodded, and they both lifted the drive in the air, then smashed it against the podium. Yellow light and heat engulfed them both in a flash, and Metal sensed a bizarre shift in the electromagnetic field. Sonic's robotic leg rose up and stuck against his own. The ground began to shake, and steam rose in the air all around them. The acid hissed as it splashed over the guardrails, and great holes dissolved in the floor. It crumbled beneath Sonic's feet, and Metal slid backwards as Sonic's weight dragged him down. With both the detector and the chaos drive in hand, Metal threw his elbow behind Sonic and smashed both podium buttons with his other arm. Sonic's legs splashed into the acid below, and he cried as a flash overtook them. When it cleared, Metal saw they had appeared on an opaque, mahogany floor. He pried himself away from Sonic and turned to face his copy, who was frantically swatting at his organic leg. It burns! Get it off! Get it off! Metal had to act quickly. Although the acid was likely diluted by water, it was still extremely potent, and it would quickly burn through Sonic's skin. He needed some way to neutralize the acid, to render it inert. Usually, water would be ideal to wash away the acid, but he had none. He glanced around the room and saw nothing but the hardwood floor and ornate doors. Then it occurred to him. He had sodium hydroxide. He leaped towards Sonic, tore open the crate, and flung the lid off the bottle. Sodium hydroxide was a potent base, and when combined with hydrochloric acid, the two would react to form harmless salt water. Metal stuffed his hand inside the bottle, and the clear liquid splashed over his hand. It was important not to apply too much, or else the base would burn Sonic just as much as the acid. He lifted Sonic's organic leg and ran his hand down his copy's fur. The solution reacted, and steam rose from Sonic's skin. It burns! Metal, make it stop! It's too hot! The reaction between hydrochloric acid and sodium hydroxide is extremely exothermic. It's no wonder it's hot. Metal let go of Sonic, reached into the crate, and wiped the sodium hydroxide from his hand with a wad of paper. He returned to Sonic, who recoiled as he approached. Metal, but give seriously, what are you doing? Can you, for once in your life, just speak and act like a normal person? My communication is sufficient. Metal returned Sonic's leg. Red blisters covered his skin, and while they would be painful, the damage was localized only to the surface of his leg, and Sonic would recover quickly. It's really not metal. Sonic let himself fall over. He stared blankly at the ceiling, with his quills and arms spread across the floor. It's really not.